Again, my name is Brock Price. I work with Syracuse University in our study abroad office, sometimes more affectionately known as Syracuse Abroad or SU Abroad. So if you hear any of those versions, all I'm talking about is Syracuse University Study Abroad. So I'm going to do a presentation here. A few things before we get started. I talk fast, so feel free to type questions in. Feel free to interrupt me. I'm a fairly casual presenter, if not made obvious by a cat in the background and some yoga blocks and a polo shirt. So we'll keep it informal, and whatever you want to do in terms of questions and things, we can wait till the end or we can do that throughout. I'm going to go a little fast besides speaking quickly just to kind of get through the content, because I think some of this, based on you already knowing and talked to Katrina a little bit before, if you're already familiar, that'll give us a chance to maybe dive into some more details if you want to do some deeper dives on specific areas. So this first intro slide is just how happy you will be when you study abroad. Some of these students are study abroad students, obviously, and then a couple of them are actually global ambassadors. And that is one of the resources you're going to have in terms of learning about a program through Syracuse, is we have student alumni who actually will work staff events. They're available via email to talk to you about studying abroad in Florence Center. So you'll hear about global ambassadors here in a little bit. Let's see if I can. So just to zoom out a little bit, a 10,000-foot view. So Syracuse University, if you're not familiar or at all, we are based in upstate New York. And so we have done study abroad for quite a while. Sending students abroad for the first time in a more formal capacity in 1919, but we opened our Florence Center. It is our oldest center, started in 1959. So we have our centers where we welcome visiting students or non-Syracuse students, and we also have Syracuse students join the programs. Interestingly, with Florence, we actually have more visiting students than Syracuse students usually. So if that's something as you're planning and thinking about your study abroad experience, painting that picture, as you will, about what it's going to look like, just know that in terms of the demographic of students, it's not like you're going to be one student amongst all Syracuse students. And in fact, during the fall, it's usually a pretty healthy cohort of Northwestern students, in addition to students coming from other programs. This is just a quick slide of other places we have programs, not as interesting to you here since you're talking about Florence. We do semester programs. We do also have summer and faculty-led programs. We welcome first-year students. So when you come in the fall, it's not impossible for you to actually have freshmen or first-year students as part of the program coming from Syracuse University too. We have a few specific academic programs too. So you'll have students who are studying things like architecture or studio art at an advanced level. And then more broadly, we talk about the center program being where most of our classes, quote unquote, live. So things like business and economics, some intro level art classes if you're not an art major, but you're interested in doing something like drawing, history, anthropology, psychology. A lot of these humanities classes call what we call our center program. So most students are enrolling in that track, but not all. We're going to talk about all this as we go. I'm going to skip that slide because we're going to talk about that throughout. So this is a little picture of the Villa Rosa. So this is our space that we have in Florence. We actually own and operate our space. So do know that you are coming to a space that Syracuse University, you're not just plugging into a university abroad. This is our space, and we have our own staff and faculty. So there's a few staff pictured here. Sasha is the director. Bob works a lot with the academic side of things. Jessica, a lot with student life, your engagement with Florence and things like that. And Amy Klein with health and wellness. If you're not there this fall, Amy is actually departing. So this is her last semester, which is fairly sad because Amy's been with us for quite a while. So we'll have a new health and wellness assistant director in the near future. But to give you a sense, there's more staff than just what we have here, and obviously dozens and dozens of faculty. And if you've never been to Florence, very, very basic details. Let's just call this the Wikipedia slide because you can find this by doing your quick Google search. Florence, in terms of my opinion, is neither gigantic nor small, right? So it's not teeny tiny, about 400,000 people in terms of the population. It is also a place where there are quite a few study abroad students. So you have this interesting mix where you can find a fair bit of English spoken in some main areas with study abroad students, but you can also move not that far and go slightly south of kind of what we would call downtown. I'm using these quotes because this is not the words that you would use in Italian to describe it. So if you go a little bit further south, you'll find areas that are very quintessentially Italian, only Italian being spoken. If you see the pictures, you know, this third bullet point will be something fairly obvious with things in terms of architecture, art. And when I say art, artistic masterpieces, we're talking about, you know, things from sculptures to paintings to drawing. So all different kinds of medium, but it is a very picturesque, quintessential European sound when it comes to the architecture. And you can see that by if you just do Google images, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about with that. But we do have specific architecture and studio art tracks, as I mentioned before, who are kind of taking advantage of that, living in the city, but also studying in the city. And here's one of the pictures right here. It's just so beautiful. So students who come on the program, this is something that Katrina, I'll ask you to step in to clarify if there's something that's more specific than this. These are some high level requirements in terms of the academics. So students who come on the program will be taking between 12 and 19 credits during the semester that you come. And students do take an Italian language course. About 99% of students do, because there's one track that does not. And I mentioned some of the academic areas that are available, but I do want to pause, Katrina, if there's anything specific to this that's worth adding. You're okay? Okay. So we have students who come, I mentioned Italian language. We have students who come who span the gamut with Italian language skills. So it's important to know that it's a pretty diverse group when it comes to language acquisition, but where you're starting from. We have students who are absolute beginners. So we call this a no barrier entry program for language. And what that means is you can come knowing zero Italian. And that means you'd take Italian 101 when you arrive. But we also have students who are intermediate, advanced, the occasional bilingual student. And so we actually partner with the University of Florence, and students who are more advanced in their Italian language can sometimes choose to enroll in this track where you can take classes that are not language classes, but other content courses that are lectured in Italian, taught at the University of Florence, and you'd be sitting around other Italian local students and international students who'd be studying at the larger university. So it's a little bit of a commute, 20 or 30 minutes from the Villa Rosa where we're located. Not that bad. Most places are kind of a commute like that. But you can also have intensive language courses if that's something that you're interested in. So just know that there's a few different ways that you can build this semester. And really, there's quite a few options. So if you're unsure, do take some time to reflect on what it is you want to do academically, personally, and professionally. But if you have some ideas, I think one of the things I want to make clear is there's plenty of ways to build it in terms of your academics and what's available. So know that there are a lot of different options for you. If you do find yourself interested in the summer, does summer even fit for you guys, Katrina, with the calendar? It does not. Skip. So this is what I mentioned, our studio arts track. So ceramics, jewelry making for students who are more advanced in some of these areas. But like I said earlier, there are some lower level classes if you're not a major in one of these areas, but you're interested, or maybe you do some of these things on your own. So even though you're not majoring or minoring, you might have photography skills. So we'd have some lower or intermediate where you do not have to be a major, but you could take some of those classes too. And if you're interested, I mean, there are students who, like I said, will take a drawing class, don't really have the skills, but because you're in that place, and if your academic, how do I want to say it? If your degree progress will allow for that class, and you can still make progress towards graduation in the way that you need to, a lot of students will opt into a class like that just as another way to be out in the city.
Brock,
yes.
Can I just say one thing now?
Yes.
Thanks. So on that last slide where you had the great list of all these art courses, these are all fantastic, and Northwestern students are permitted to take any of these courses abroad that they would like. But just a quick note for anyone for Northwestern students, for you to be able to get transfer credit at Northwestern, we have to offer a similar department. So for example, we do not offer jewelry making or metalsmithing at Northwestern. And so while you're more than welcome to take this course while you're abroad at with Syracuse and Florence, it's just important for students to know that that is the type of course that would not be eligible for transfer credit. So that's as you go through the application process with Syracuse and with Northwestern, we would review courses together. And the good kind of easy way to think of it is you just want to see if Northwestern offers that same discipline in undergraduate studies. If not, then most likely you would not be able to get transfer credit for it. Okay, thanks. Sorry, just wanted to say that here while you had those courses up.
Good point. It looks so warm in these pictures. So I live in Milwaukee. I'm a little north of Chicago, and it's like 40 degrees. So the sunshine in Florence is sort of sucking me in today. Okay, so shifting a little bit to professional side of this. So I always invite students, I mentioned the 3 buckets earlier: personal, professional, and academic. And within that professional bucket, I would invite you to consider thinking about things that you could do in addition to your classes. So some opportunities that exist are internships and research specifically at the undergraduate level. And this is something where a lot of students will choose to do an internship while you're abroad. We have specific staff that support this. So it's not something where you find the internship, you do all the legwork. It's something that we facilitate. So we have a lot of organizations that we have historically worked with over many, many years, and they're in a lot of different disciplines. And a lot of these details are on our website, but just a couple things to note. You can do an internship in an area of interest that is within your major or minor, or it could be something different. So we've had students who have been psychology majors who have done business internships and that sort, or you can actually be a business major and do a business related internship. So some of this relates to what do you maybe have in terms of ideas about a career track, or maybe in a career, a professional job after you graduate, or an area of interest, and how those intersect is just something to think about. So you're not painted into a corner. And these internships can start as young as the 2nd year, junior year, 4th year. It fits really any time. The nature of that internship might be a little bit different depending on how many years of experience you have, right? So if you're a 4th year student and you've got 3.5 years of classes under your belt, you've already done a few internships, you'll probably bring a lot more to an internship than if you've never done one and it's your 2nd year. But that might be a launching pad for you then. If you're a 2nd year student, doing an internship abroad can sometimes snowball into opportunities when you return from your study abroad. So again, just invite you to think about if it's something that you would want to do. It also gets you to another part of the city on a fairly regular basis. So where you're studying and where you're living, often your internship placement location organization will be somewhere else. So it gives you a chance to do that 20 or 30-minute trip somewhere across town where there are different restaurants, different museums, different social things happening, in addition to doing your internship work. These are just a few different areas, but again, this list is ever changing. These are some maybe areas where we have the most interns the most often would be the best way to describe it, but we're adding new places every semester based on people's interests. Working with refugees, sometimes doing volunteer work, in fact, that's not internship specific focused. If you would like to do something maybe not for credit or not as many hours, we also have lots of ways to do that. We usually use the phrase like sort of facilitated local immersion, which is a little bit of word salad, is to say there's lots of ways to get engaged and we can help you do that. And we'll facilitate your understanding of what's possible through that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an internship. So this is a little bit about the academic calendar. The dates do differ a little bit if you do the direct enroll University of Florence track that I mentioned earlier versus what we call, again, our Florence Center track. A big thing to note here is that if you look at the academic dates that are listed online right now, spring, for example, fall of 21 and spring of 22 were actually slightly shorter semesters than they have been in the past for visa reasons. So you did not have a visa if you came during this academic year. And starting in fall of 22, the plan is that the dates will kind of go back to what they were, which is again, slightly longer duration. So the reason we don't have specific dates on here is because those don't want you to get distracted and think that the exact dates you're seeing for this year are going to be very, very close to next year, because they'll be a little more different than you would normally see. But we do post those online so you can kind of see where they are. Really, the only thing to note is if you do have any type of obligations outside of the program, that you're making sure dates will fit with, you know, a birthday or a wedding or a graduation or something that you have within your family or your network, just to make sure that those things will line up. Okay, so some more of the fun stuff. So there are a few things with Syracuse Florence that you'll find are fairly unique when compared to other programs, and signature seminars are one of those things. Basically, signature seminars are traveling courses that are a part of your larger semester experience, and they are credit-based classes, but they have subjects that are usually interdisciplinary, and you're traveling with other students in the program, studying the subject matter of that course, but it's taking you outside of the city of Florence and often outside of Italy. So for example, the first one you see on this list, Borders and Flux, Identities and Conflict in Ireland, is taught by Dr. Maggie Skoll. She actually works and lives where our London Center is located. And this signature seminar brings together students from our Florence Center and our London Center. And you're working within, broadly within Ireland, but including Northern Ireland, studying some of the history that has happened there, some of the atrocities, some very, very interesting things as it relates to the people who have lived in those locations, and you're actually physically going there. And Maggie is an amazing professor, super smart, super engaging. She's a younger PhD, but she's just got this fire behind her, and she's so smart in navigating some of these more serious topics of what is it like to study something like conflict in a region when you're actually there, and how are you sensitive to that, and how has it affected people's lives in the past, how has it affected culture. So anyway, the Borders and Flux is one of them, but there are multiple options that are available to students as signature seminars. So it's another thing to kind of look at as you're planning your semester. And I'm going to pause, Katrina, in case there's anything to add about signature seminars.
The one point I would just say about signature seminars is, as Brock said, they're really wonderful. They are credit bearing. The way Northwestern financial aid works, unfortunately, financial aid does not apply toward what are considered optional components of a program. And so just one thing to note, that if you do receive financial aid, unfortunately, it would not apply towards this portion of the program. It would apply towards every other cost that's considered part of the total cost of attendance budget. So that's tuition and flight and housing and personal expenses, but not additional program components like this.
It may change.
That may, yes.
So we are talking about maybe making them required.
Okay.
So TBD, but your point is important, because that change may or may not take place in the coming academic year.
Okay. Yeah. So for now, don't plan on those to be included in the cost of attendance. And if you have additional questions about that, we can talk outside of this session as well.
Smart.
Thank you.
So in addition to the signature seminars, we're doing a lot of other things that are not quite as long. The signature seminars themselves usually range between 10 and 14 days. So a little bit more substantial in terms of duration. We do these other things, as you can see on this slide, field trips and some course related travel inside of the city, or day trips that are really, really close to Florence. So you'll have some classes that will actually meet sometimes or fairly regularly out in Florence, so around the city. You saw the picture earlier, for example, of the drawing. It's a really easy example, but that was not happening in the classroom. That was happening out in front of a specific view or location. That's happening with other classes as well, though. So history courses, you might be going to a specific area in the city where a speech was given, or you might be looking at a building that's a historic building or used to be used for a different purpose. So you'll go to some of these places as a class, and you might start at that location. So your professor may say, next Tuesday, remember, we're meeting here. So then you'll go meet at a specific part of the city. But we're also doing field trips, and these are a lot of day trips in and around the region. So you'll find there's a lot of these, and some of them are all together, some of them are optional. So you can kind of pick and choose things that you're interested in doing on your own, because you also might be coordinating some nearby travel with friends that you make or friends that you already have. So you might be doing a trip on your own. And so you'll kind of be coordinating when is something required versus when is something optional, and when might I want to do something on my own. There's a lot happening. We also bring folks to our campus. So there's things happening on our space, guest lectures, conferences. There's not going to be a shortage of things to engage in. So just tons and tons going on. So housing. This is something that's changed in the last couple of years. So if you talk to students who are alumni from, a year or more ago, historically, the primary housing option was host families. And that's shifted in the last year and a half. So now we have host families, and we have some apartments, and we also have what we call the hotel. So a few different options where students, you can basically fill out a form when you've applied to express what your preferences are, what your ideal scenario is. You kind of rank your options, and then you'll be placed based on what's available. So this slide is talking about what was historically our only option, host families, and we still work with host families quite a bit. And I would say that most students are sometimes just a little bit unsure, like, do I want to live with a host family? Is this right for me? And it's funny because signature seminars and host families, based on our program assessments, are the two things that most students say were the most positive aspects of the program experience that they had, even if they were a little unsure going in. So a lot of this will be really common sense, but when it comes to host families, they kind of become friends in some ways with students. You know, you're eating with them on a regular basis. Sometimes they're your translator, where you're like, I heard this word. What does this word mean? It's not uncommon to get invited to social family events. It could be a birthday, you know, it could be a retirement or a graduation or a wedding or something like this. So a lot of times students are surprised that family really becomes that operative word of host family. You're really invited in. And a lot of that has to do, I would think, with some cultural expectations. Like, to invite someone into your home really is to invite them into your family in some ways. And so that can be a really, really warm, beautiful part of the experience. So just know that that is an option. I don't know if these pictures are helpful or not, but we do have apartments that are not just reserved for architecture students, as that first bullet point says. So we have apartments that are placed throughout the city that students can stay in, that are fully furnished. And again, this is an option for you to express your preference. Now, when you are filling out your housing preference forms, if you want to live with a friend or someone that you already know, that's something that you're more than welcome to do. Or if you want to branch out and live with somebody else on the program, you can do that as well. But if you want to live with somebody, you make sure you're in agreement about that. Make sure you're both expressing the same kind of preferences, that we would like to live together. I would like to live with this person. My preference is for a host family and that kind of thing. So it can be really clear to people when they're reviewing those things. This is just a little bit of, just want to put some pictures of, can't have study abroad in Florence without talking about food. So just a few pictures here. It's the food is absolutely a part of the culture as much as anything else. And so experiencing Italian culture without experiencing the food is just not possible. So there are an infinite number of places that you'll be able to explore locally in terms of trying food. And I would invite you to do that as well. It gets you a chance to explore the city, but also bonus points because the food is delicious. This talks a little bit about that there are some meals provided if you do live with a host family, and how that can be a little bit different if you're living with an apartment. So that also might be, there's not really a right housing option, but maybe there's something that's a right fit for you based on your own, how do you live, cooking for yourself, versus going out versus having food prepared for you by the family. So just something to think about a little bit. So I mentioned some of these activities earlier that we host on our campus: Italian cooking classes, olive oil and wine tastings happen, traditional soccer tournament that we always do with other teams that we win fairly often. I don't know if that's because we're competitive or we just happen to recruit like soccer students. I don't know how that happens, but anyway, soccer is happening, or football is being the appropriate word for that. But a lot of these things are happening on our campus too. So there is a very vibrant social, academic, fun vibe happening on our program too. And I guess, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but the program has, we're between 150 and 350 students a semester, usually kind of sandwiching somewhere in the middle there. So if you came in the fall term, it would be closer to like 200 students. So it's not gigantic, but it's not teeny tiny. So that's where there's a lot of events and activities happening. This is of our Office of Student Life that we talked about earlier that are helping with some of these activities that I've mentioned. I mentioned volunteering, workshops, but also conversation exchanges if you wanted to meet with somebody and practice Italian. And maybe do an exchange where you're practicing English and Italian based on what your first language is and what language you're learning. A lecture series. So this is what I mentioned earlier, where there might be a topic for the semester or a theme, and then we're bringing people to give lectures. Sometimes it might be our faculty, but often it's people from off campus. They may be from Florence, they may be from somewhere else lecturing on a specific topic. It could be sustainability, it could be fashion, it could be politics. Sometimes it's interdisciplinary, but really, really, really fun to come to. I'm going to leave this off because it's more helpful to talk with financial aid with Katrina in the study abroad office at Northwestern. So health and safety, just to pause on this, we do a much deeper dive with health and safety during pre-departure, and that's actually divided up into a couple different presentations, one specifically for students, and also another one for parents or guardians. So if you are working with a parent or something like this, you can let them know. Some of this information is listed online, but we know that questions can inevitably come up about this. And if you have something, you can proactively ask questions, but you can also attend these sessions where we talk a little bit more in detail about how does insurance work as a Northwestern student when you're studying abroad? How does that interplay with being a student on a Syracuse University program? We also have a few different resources available to students, and one of them is called Alert Traveler, for example, where we have an app that everybody has, on their phone or access to via email, where we can let students know about something. And it can be as small as, taxis are striking this weekend. So if you're traveling, be mindful of that. And we can send something out to everybody, and it will be a push notification to your phone as well as your email. So if it's something you're getting on Thursday afternoon, you'll know about it before you plan something and travel. So there are also, like I mentioned at the beginning, lots and lots of staff. So you have people that you will have access to if you have questions about things like travel. But we also have an on-site doctor that visits the center a few days a week. So if you're, sometimes when you're like, I'm not sure if I'm feeling well, do I want to go to the hospital or doctor? Well, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can kind of take advantage of some of the resources that we have available that are coming to you as opposed to you going out to them. We also have our student services team. So when you apply, there will be a questionnaire related to accommodations. So if you'd like to make a request for accommodations, there'll be some questions, some paperwork and things like that. If you're interested in something like longer test taking time or something like this, just please share what you're comfortable with sharing so that can be reviewed by our student services team, and they can have a conversation with you as well as Northwestern folks about what can make sense. So resources. You already have a couple that are obvious. So you have the Northwestern office and you have Katrina. You also will have our website in addition to Northwestern's website. So there'll be some information you'll find maybe in a little more detail on our website. But a lot of it is very similar depending on what you're looking for. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, My Slice, now this is a little bit granular, but when you get into the program, this is kind of like our student information system. And there are a few things that you'll do relating to course registration. You'll get a Syracuse email address. Some of that will happen. So just know that you'll eventually get into the Syracuse University student information system that we call My Slice because we are orange. That is our color and our mascot. So that's where the slice comes from. A little bit punny. And then you'll see things about health and safety. I mentioned diversity, inclusion, and program pages. My Slice is very financial related. You can make payments and things through there. And global ambassadors that I noted at the very beginning, who are alumni who have been on the programs and super excited to talk about their experiences. They're happy to email. We do some events with them fairly regularly where they'll do an info session. They're always doing Instagram takeovers. So they're on social media a bunch. And this includes students who are currently abroad. So we're doing Q&As and stuff on Instagram lives. And then staff, more specifically, in addition to Katrina, you'll be working with the two staff you see on this slide. And Cullen, who is on the right, is really our admissions counselor or advisor for Florence. So when you're applying to Florence, Cullen is the one who'd help answer your question of, did you get my transcript? Is everything submitted? And Courtney will be helping when it comes to obtaining a visa. And a student visa is really just a sticker that goes inside your passport. That allows you to be traveling for a specific duration for a specific purpose, and in this case it's studying. No need to think about it too much right now, but just know that we'll be kind of holding your hand through some of the more complicated paperwork for some of this stuff, and these are two names and faces that you'll want to know before you actually get to Florence. Application requirements you'll see on the Northwestern website, so I'm not going to get into that, but you will be doing an application at at some point for Syracuse on our website as well. So when you're doing your application for Northwestern, just make a mental note that you'll also be doing an application for Syracuse University Study Abroad. And most importantly, you do need to get accepted by Northwestern to be accepted by the program. So there's kind of an order of operations of applying to Northwestern, make sure you're getting accepted as well as doing the Syracuse University application. And also be mindful of your Northwestern deadlines. We do have our deadline for the fall term that is going to be March 15th, but you want to watch your Northwestern deadline that I don't know off the top of my head, Katrina, I apologize. But
February 10th, sorry.
February 10th.
Yeah.
So that is the most important deadline to hit, because then you'll have this extra time where you'll notice you'll be able to be doing your Syracuse University application stuff shortly thereafter. And then this is just this is a picture of our study abroad building in Syracuse, New York, 106 Walnut, if people are curious, and then just some links to our social media. Pretty quick, not too long. Let's open it up. If people do have questions, feel free to type in. And if people do jump off, just a quick thank you for taking the time. Feel free to reach out to the people that you have in terms of contacts. I'm happy to help. Katrina as a resource. So if you have questions, you can also reach out offline. But again, I appreciate you taking the time, and good luck on preparing to study abroad.